Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So, as of today, the stock market is at a near record high. Maybe it's the record high. It's over 40,000, the Dow Jones. And a lot of people are watching it and saying, wow, this is great. The stock market's going up. Look, the housing market's going up. And gold's at 3,500 an ounce. Like everything's getting, prosperous. Wow, this is wonderful. And it seems that way, but unfortunately, there's a story that is beneath that story, which tells us what's really going on, which is our dollar is losing money fast, and they're printing money, they're printing dollars fast, which is basically as they print more dollars, these dollars lose value. And so everything seems to be more valuable, but it's actually an indicator of inflation. Not necessarily hyperinflation yet, but we're certainly headed that way. And so you say, okay, wait, why is it that my house is now worth $800,000, though I bought it for 300,000 15 years ago? So I should be rich, yet I can barely afford to pay bills. I can barely afford property tax. I can barely afford groceries. And this is the conversation a lot of Americans are having right now as they're scratching their heads trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Because even though, again, the Dow's over 40,000, you ask most Americans, say, hey, do you feel rich? Like, look at the stock market. Are you just rolling in cash? And most Americans are struggling. They're saying, no, actually, I'm working two jobs. My wife had to work a job. Like we're really struggling. This is the case for so many people here in America. And it's because our currency has been weaponized against us. It's very simple. Our currency, which is not a real currency, it's a fiat currency. Obviously, I'm sure if you're watching my show, you're aware that the Federal Reserve isn't a federal company. It's a private bank that has loaned money to the government, and that we're basically debt slaves to a globalist banking cabal, to put it simply. But they are using this. It's a weapon. It's a weapon for them to control us. It's a weapon for them to get us to put our hard work into these assets that they control, that they can then inflate those assets and convince us that we're really rich now because our stock portfolio or our housing price, yet we've never been poorer, it seems. And then what happens, though, is that they inflate and then they create some sort of collapse situation. We all lose everything because we've put all of our hardworking all of our assets that we've earned through our blood, sweat, and tears into these fake financial instruments, right? Into these dollar bills, these stocks, bonds, etc. These assets that can get wiped out in a crash. And then once that crash happens, the elites come in, they scoop everything up, and it's just wash and rinse and repeat. This is the cycle. And so joining me today is a man that I first read his book, gosh, probably 15, maybe almost even 20 years ago. It's Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. He's arguably one of the most famous financial authors. His book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm not sure how many copies it sold, but it's probably millions and millions of copies worldwide. And he's someone that has, you could say very radical views on finance, which I agree with a lot of his perspectives, but he's radical because he's not telling you what the school system is telling you or what your TD advisor is telling you. He's saying, hey, the system is rigged. They want to keep you poor. They're going to use these tactics to keep stealing your money from you and exit the system, right? So that's his whole kind of shtick is here's how to gain financial literacy that will help you escape the rat race. Now, Mr. Kiyosaki is also someone that has been warning of a coming crash for quite some time. Now, and I feel like I've been in the same boat. I'm like, folks, like the whole thing is like we're at such precarious time. Yes, Dow's over 40,000, but don't be fooled by it because it's built on a massive debt bubble with money printing and a money supply like we've never seen before. And so Robert's one of the people, though, that has been warning about this and saying, look, everyone, something big is coming. There is a big financial event coming. And so in my interview with him today, we're going to be talking about what are the signs that he sees that show him that a significant financial reset is coming. Who's causing it? How does it tie into global wars and what's happening, geopolitically with tariffs and everything like that? But also, what are the things that we can do to be out in front of this, to not get hit by the train that's just coming and steamrolling. Most people who are laying on the tracks because they don't see it coming. It's like, okay, we can see it coming. Now, what do we do? And so we're going to be getting into all this and more. It's going to be a fun conversation. And again, it's kind of cool to interview a guy that, I've known of his books for probably 2 decades. And so there's a certain kind of level of excitement around that, which I'm looking forward to. Um, Now, before we get into the show, just a few quick notes. First off, if this is your first time listening, welcome. Thank you for joining the show. While this is more of a financial show, I cover a whole gamut of things. It's health, geopolitics, elections, all the whole run of things. So preparedness. So make sure you tune back in the next episode because you might find it's a health one that you really enjoy. On top of that, every show that I do is done as a podcast as well as a video. So maybe you're watching on Rumble or YouTube. Just know that every show that I do is also in podcast. So go to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Search for Man in America. You'll find me there. And subscribe on those apps as well if you want to listen via podcast. The other thing is that if you've watched me a little bit, there's one thing that angers me almost more than anything, and that's chemtrails. Like, I live in the country. I hate walking out with my children looking forward to a beautiful blue sky and seeing a barcode in the sky that blocks out the sun, that's dropping poisons on us. And I'm wondering, oh gosh, when's this kind of stop? And so one thing that my wife and I have done as a way to counteract this and to create more of a public movement of raising awareness is that we created this really fun and sarcastic website called Make Skies Blue Again. So today's forecast is cloudy with a chance of aluminum. So if you are like me and you're angry about chemtrails and want to do something about it and want to raise awareness, one of the best things that you can do is wear a t-shirt that is going to make people question you, which is great. This is how you start conversations. So at makeskiesblueagain.com, we've got t-shirts, we've got flags, we've got hats, we've got all kinds of different things, even for kids. We've got little kids. Look at that. Look at these cute little kids wearing their Make Skies Blue Again t-shirt. So you've got, t-shirts for kids, we got t-shirts for adults, we've got flags, and really what's behind this, the energy behind it is that we want to create some sort of a movement of people that are wearing these t-shirts to the grocery store to family gatherings and having more people say, "Hey, I like your t-shirt. And I've noticed actually they're spraying a lot." Right? Because this is how we get things done here in America is we have to create something where enough Americans get behind the momentum of something, and that's how we can create change. The politicians don't listen to us, but if there's enough of us saying something, we're going to force them to listen to us. So if you're offended and you're upset about chemtrails like I am, go to makeskiesblueagain.com. Get yourself a t-shirt, get it for your family. We've got a whole collection of them too, and we're gonna be adding more and more. We've got various other ones, different styles. We have different kind of fun designs, and we're gonna be doing a ton more. We've even got enamel mugs. If you want to Make Skies Blue Again mug, you got it there. So go to makeskiesblueagain.com. We set up a promo code for all the Man in America listeners. So promo code Seth, that's my name, SETH, will save you 10%. So go do it today, right? Right now, as you're listening, press pause or whatever it is, go to makeskiesblueagain.com, order that t-shirt and wear it proudly. Wear it to your local, family gathering and see what kind of questions you get. It'll be a good opportunity for you. All right, let's go ahead and dive into today's show with Robert Kiyosaki. Mr. Robert Kiyosaki, it is such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you very much for giving us your time today.
Oh, man, it's been a pleasure, and it's really been, for me, a great pleasure getting to know you. So we met at Clay Clark's place in Tulsa. And that boy, yeah, let's start again. Let's start again. Gee.
Yeah, we'll start over.
Okay, you want some water?
No, that's fine. What happened was years ago, I snore a lot. So my wife says I got to do something about it. So I met this quack called a doctor. He cut out my whole palate and everything. So stuff just falls down. There's no stopping it.
Oh,
And it was like 3 weeks of healing and this whole thing bloody. And
yeah.
if there was ever occasional malpractice, that would have been it for me.
Goodness. Yeah, I would say. Okay. So you're good now? We'll start over.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Mr. Robert Kiyosaki, it is an honor to have you on the show. Thank you very much for giving us your time today.
Well, it's been my pleasure since we met at Clay Clark's place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a pleasure meeting you. But that Clay Clark, man, he is one character.
It's a good
Good
word for him,
character.
character. Yeah, that is it.
He's a good, driven, smart. And I've never met a guy who was so hyper all the time. He's doing so much good. And then I met his mother, and she just says, she just lets him be Clay Clark. I mean, so he's endorsed by his mother, and he's doing magnificent work. So it was great meeting you out there and all the people that he surrounds himself with. His Clay Clark starts his days at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
You know,
it's incredible. Yeah, he's like he's a machine. He's a machine.
uh, but I have problems with my company starting at 9 o'clock. Yes, hundreds of people showing up at 5 a.m. in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Man, he's a leader of a leader. He's a fantastic young man.
Oh, he is. He is.
Yeah.
And it's you know, for the folks that aren't familiar with you and probably few and far between, I first came across you, gosh, probably 15 years ago or maybe even 20 years ago when I got a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was one of the earlier that was one of the earlier kind of books on finance that I read. And it always stuck with me, you know, understanding, oh, hey, that's wow, that's not actually an asset, right? And that kind of framing. And so I've been really looking forward to this discussion. And so where I wanted to start with you, and we can, you kind of take it as it comes, is that for the past couple of years, I've interviewed a lot of different financial experts, and also through my own research. And these aren't like, you know, kind of your typical day traders. These are people like, you know, Martin Armstrong, or people that are looking at large global patterns, like the bigger picture of our global financial system. They're not saying, oh, maybe there's going to be a recession and 2 or 3 points this way. These are people saying that our global financial system is nearing some sort of end. This fiat currency, the US dollar, all fiat currencies have a life cycle. There's something big happening. And oftentimes these people have said, and I've agreed, that at some point there will be some sort of significant crash and reset. And there's mixed responses to that. There's some people that say, look, I see it, I agree. There's a lot of people that say, look, Seth, you're like the boy who cries wolf. You're always saying that there's going to be some sort of financial collapse and it hasn't happened yet. And they take that as the reason for why it will never happen. Because, well, it hasn't happened yet, so it's not going to happen. And I know that you're also someone that you talk my language, and you're talking about the Federal Reserve and the central banking system, but also how there is some sort of big financial reset or collapse or crash, whatever you want to call it, that is looming. And so what what leads you to believe that? What are the indicators that you see that signify that some sort of massive change is coming to our global financial system?
Well, thank you. And I agree wholeheartedly that people say, well, nothing's happened. We're fine. And I was a student of a gentleman named R. Buckminster Fuller. He created the geodesic dome. He's considered one of America's greatest futurists. John Denver wrote a song about him, What One Man Can Do. And I was a student of Fuller's. And he kicked my butt. And, one day he asked me, he says, what's your purpose in life? I said, make a lot of money. And, Fuller was an American. He went to Harvard, and we got thrown out of Harvard 3 times. And he graduated from Naval Academy, my sister's school. But anyway, he says, what a waste of a brain to just make money. I said, and he didn't understand. So he scolded me in front of 150 people in a seminar. It was a week-long seminar. And he scolded me. He says, ask yourself this. Don't make money for yourself. What does God want done? And I'm not really religious, but he's basically asking a big macro question. What does God want done? And that's a long way of answering your question, is that he said people cannot get out of the way of things they cannot see coming to them. Let me repeat that again. People cannot get out of the way of things they cannot see coming towards them. They can't see it. It's almost like a fog or something. You don't really see it, or a cloud. And so when he asked me that question, I was already panicking about money back then. This was 83.
Debt doesn't just show up one day. It builds little by little. Credit cards, car loans, medical bills, and suddenly you're juggling payments, feeling stuck. But here's the good news: you're not stuck. You just need a reset, not the great reset, a good reset. At American Financing, they help homeowners like you every day. They use your home's equity and roll that high interest debt into one simple, affordable payment. They're saving homeowners an average of $800 a month. No judgment, no pressure, just real solutions that put you back in control. Imagine breathing again, sleeping again, knowing your future is yours to shape. It starts with one call. It only takes 10 minutes to get started, and there is no upfront fees, so it costs nothing to find out how much you can save. If you start today, you may be able to delay your next two mortgage payments. American Financing's salary based consultants are ready to listen and ready to help. So take back your peace of mind with American Financing. Call American Financing today. It's 866 889 1476. Again, that's 866 889 1476. Or visit americanfinancing.net/Seth.
And people cannot see the crash because it's happening so slowly. So, like, gold, 1980, 71, yeah, was a few bucks. Now it's $3,500. So I went from like a 35, which was manipulated, to $3,500 today. This is May 2025. That meant the purchasing power of your money went down. If gold went up, the purchasing money of your money is coming down. And people cannot see that, Seth. They can't see that. They call it inflation, but it was an intentional manipulation of our currency. And that's what Buckminster Fuller was. He's a great man. He wrote a book called The Grunch of Giants. And grunch stands for gross universal cash heist. So when he kicked my butt and saying, what does God want done? I was already studying all this stuff, just intuitively. I think we're all here on Earth with a higher cause, but we don't really find it because you go to school, they tell you just get good grades and get a job. Well, and then you go to church and say, well, the love of money is the root of all evil. So I wasn't getting a straight answer at school or church. So anyways, that's why people cannot see what's coming towards them. So the dollar, like I said, the price of gold keeps going up. What does that mean? That means your purchasing power of your dollar is going down. They can't see it. They call it inflation. I call it manipulation.
Yeah, it is interesting how they oftentimes will just sweep it under the rug as inflation. They'll say, oh, the CPI is at 3 or 4%. And they keep telling us these little numbers, which you're thinking, well, it doesn't seem like that's real because if inflation's at 11%, why is it that the truck that just cost $70,000, 15 years ago was $30,000? It's like that doesn't make sense. Or rent, cost of living. It's not to mention if you go back to the 50s, a guy that was a painter that painted houses, he owned his own home. He owned a 2,000 square foot on a little quarter acre lot in town, and they had two cars and all of that off of one simple salary. Now to have that same cost of way of living, you have to have two six-figure careers to live like someone did in the 50s.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of reasons for it, but primarily our dollar is fake. It's not real money. And so the average person goes to school to work hard for money, to save money, and get out of debt. And because of a lack of financial education, which is my shtick, the dollar is debt. They're called US bonds, treasuries. And you go to a financial planner, and they'll tell you, oh, the 60-40, which is 60% equities, 40% bonds. Well, the whole thing's crashing right now. And we have the baby boom generation which I'm a member of. We're already retiring. We're out of time. And so I wrote another book called Who Stole My Pension? And our pensions are looted. But that's the manipulation from what Buckminster Fuller called the grunch of giants, the gross universal cash heist, how our wealth is stolen via our money. And our school systems, those Marxists, they say, well, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money. That's how you get stolen. That's how you get your money stolen, because they don't put anything in here, you know, and they have no financial education at all. So I said, after Bucky kicked my butt and says, what does God want done? See, back here's my cash flow board game. I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. 25 years, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is still #1 internationally. And it's a very simple book, as you know. Your house is not an asset. Savers don't save. Savers are losers. And things like that, very simple things. But our wealth is being stolen by going to school to get a job.
One way that I look at it, I interviewed a guy named David Jensen recently, who's really understands, especially one of his strengths is understanding the LBMA and the paper gold and paper silver and how they've manipulated these prices and what
Yeah.
happened, in '71 when they took the dollar off the gold standard and how basically gold and silver were this kind of, he referred as like the canary in the coal mine. They were this warning signal because you saw over the next 10 years gold and silver were hitting record highs every month, but it was because they were over printing because they could now print unlimited. But one thing that David Jensen kind of framed, and one way he framed it, which really stuck with me, is that they have this basic formula, which is inflate, collapse, acquire. So what they do is that, and this is how I look at it, is that they've through the school, or even now you go to your local, your TD or your wealth advisor, your Vanguard, who runs your IRA. What they've done, as I see it, is that they've convinced everyone to put all of our hard work and all of our assets into these fake assets that they can inflate the value of. So dollar savings accounts, stock markets, bond, all these assets that they have control that they're actually fake, that they can inflate the value that, and everyone keeps thinking, like I talk to my friends and they're like, oh my gosh, our house is worth $800,000 on Zillow now. Like I'm rich, right? Because these in values, because they've printed so much money that now the housing prices are so high, the stock market seems like it's so high, but in my opinion, it's a reflection of the money supply, which has been greatly overinflated. But then once it gets to a point they can't inflate it anymore, then everyone has all their assets in these fake things. They collapse, all the prices go down, everyone loses everything, and then they come in and they scoop it up. It's like in 2008, 2009, how now our taxpayer money is funding these giant banks and financial institutions to come buy our houses for pennies on the dollar. So just inflate, collapse, acquire, right? This is cycle to keep siphoning away the real value while we're in the rat race chasing the fake numbers.
Right. And it goes back again. I'm not trying to blame anybody, but our academic system is a big problem with it. They teach gender bending and they're racist. Black lives matter. All lives matter. You know what I mean? They've gone so far off track. That was my point here. These academics are Marxists, basically. They believe in taxation, labor unions, all the things I don't really want. But I'm concerned again. As Fuller says, people cannot get out of the way of things they cannot see. So because we learn nothing at school, they can't see anything because money is just this thing floating around out there. So they can't see it. It's, oh, my house went up. What it meant was your dollar came down. Or gold, when I was buying gold, it was $35 an ounce, and today's about 3,500, I think. And did gold go up or did the dollar come down? And the average person says, oh, gold went up. Or Bitcoin, I have a lot of Bitcoin. Oh, Bitcoin's going up. So, no, your dollar's coming down. And so what's happening is that, it concerns me. I've never seen homelessness like this before. Why is homelessness exploding? And I really haven't got a good answer. They blame it on drugs and mental illness, which is part of the problem. But homelessness is a major problem. You go to LA or San Francisco, Hawaii, wherever it's nice. They're not stupid people. They got one trip to Hawaii and they're homeless, living in paradise on the beach, and they get fed. So socialism, as I say, socialism works for those who don't work. And America is no longer a capitalist system. We're socialists, hardcore socialists. So anyway, that's kind of my big picture shtick.
Yeah, and so I
Oh,
want
one
to.
last thing. This book here, this book is actually about time. This is called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Have you read this book?
Oh, I
It's
have,
a must.
and I've actually interviewed J. Edward Griffin before. He's a
Yeah, he's a good guy.
brilliant man. It looks like yours is very heavily read.
Oh man, I study and I flunked out of school. I'm a really stupid person. But anyway, he says it in here. It says bailout is the name of the game. And I went, wow, it's exactly true. So the bankers go and screw the whole system up. When it collapses, we pay them billions of dollars and the taxpayer pays for it. So that's the system. Our money is fake, it's corrupt. It's no longer capitalism, it's really crony capitalism, so the rich get richer. And I like it personally. I like getting richer, but I feel for my fellow human beings who are working harder and harder and harder and can't get ahead. But they don't go, so they send their kids to school. And Mr. Obama made sure all they got at school was student loan debt. So our student loan debt's 1.6 trillion today. So we've screwed the poor kids. So if you come from a rich family, my friends all rich, they pay for the kids' education. But if you come from a middle class or a lower family, you leave school with like 30,000 or 50,000 in debt of the worst possible type of debt. It's a debt you can't forgive. It goes with, it's like albatross around your neck for your life. Thank you, Mr. Obama. Marxist.
Exactly. But I'm curious though. So if we look at like as of right now, the Dow's at over 40,000, right? Which is, for a lot of people that have their life savings tied up in the stock market, they're just thinking, gosh, we're just flying high and look how much the Dow's at over 40,000. This is a record. But obviously, in my opinion, it's a bubble. It's a reflection of inflation and overprinting. Same reason why gold is so high, right? It's not the stock market is so high. It's just that the dollar is worth so little. But when you talk about the idea of a crash or this reset of the financial system, and I know it's hard to predict things, but what do you see the correction being? If Dow's at say 40,000, because I've had some people say that Dow should be at 10,000, which would be huge if we lost 75% of the market. But what do you see? Because there's a lot of people that they say, well, yeah, Seth, you've been talking about stock market crash, and look at the Dow, it's up over 40,000, and you know, I'm not gonna take my money out of there because it's safe, and look how well it's doing. But what do you see? What are your predictions for the stock market?
I don't care. I mean, uh, I have stocks, but they're my stocks. I mean, that back there's my cash flow board game is designed to teach people what our schools don't teach about money. And this is the real game board. It's a financial statement. All these new pundits talk about financial literacy. Well, this is it. My rich dad said, this is your report card when you leave school, your financials. And 95% of people leaving school don't know what this is. This is called an income statement, income, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. The average professor has not an effing clue. They're all like my poor dad. I have job security and I have a pension. I'm going, and you're teaching our kids, you idiot? So I really hated school. I flunked out of school. I graduated from a great school. I had appointments in Naval Academy and Merchant Marine Academy because I'm more military than anything else. So I served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 2 years. 2 terms, 2 tours. I flew this little baby here. This was what I flew in Vietnam. It was a helicopter gunship. It was the most feared weapon of the Viet Cong because I could go right down and kill them face to face at an unfair advantage. And it was terrible because they were just doing what I was doing. They're defending their country. That's a long way of saying it is that we're going to war pretty soon. Because when you look at history, because history proves people don't learn from history. It always starts with a currency war, trade war, shooting war. So if you look at our America's, so it goes currency war, trade war, kinetic war, shooting. So the first thing that happens is they start monkeying with the money. They start printing money. So then there was a tariff. It was called the Boston Tea Party. So this is how it goes. It went 1773, Boston Tea Party. The tax war, 1776, revolutionary. We're on the edge of that right now because we're printing so much money. And when Trump's a good friend of mine here, wrote two books together, and we're going to a shooting war with China. And we're already at a shooting war in Israel and the Ukraine. But I was just in the South Pacific with a group called the Eagle Society. And the Eagle Society is a great organization, is that they take you to the real, like D-Day and Normandy and all this, but they actually have their historians or Ambrose historians. And they're historians who don't learn from the textbook. Ambrose historians have to learn by living on the land and interviewing the people. And in a war, they interview the soldiers, not the generals. So I've been interviewed many times with them because I was a little measly Marine lieutenant flying these things around out there. And so the war I saw wasn't the war they reported in the news. It was a bunch of lies. So the Vietnam War was all this. So, man, we're getting our asses kicked out here. So so I was on tour with these guys in the South Pacific, and I met this Marine who actually fought at Hacksaw Ridge. A movie by, I think it was Clint Eastwood or Spielberg, Hacksaw Ridge. And this Marine's there. He's 100 years old, and he's telling us what it was like to be a U.S. Marine. I was a U.S. Marine, to be fighting the Japanese or the Japs, And I'm Japanese, so I'm going, you can feel for both sides. And there's like 18,000 people still missing up there on that ridge. But then, I think Eastwood I think it was Eastwood did that movie, Hacksaw Ridge. There's a guy named Dawes, Dominic Dawes or something, who was a conscientious objector, and he still served. I mean, he's Dawes, DWES, and he refused to carry a gun. Yeah, who put it on?
Let's see,
And
actually.
It's such a good movie.
Oh, it was
Anyway.
actually directed by Mel Gibson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2016, directed by. I didn't know it was actually directed by Mel Gibson. It makes sense. His
Yeah.
shows have that depth to them oftentimes. Yeah.
Right. So to actually stand there with this Marine who was 100 years old, and he's telling us what it was like to be up there fighting. It was like the war came straight into my head, because he was so there with it. And then you go to school, and you have a guy who studies World War II from the history books. And you wonder why he fall asleep. Do you know what I mean? So there's so much our schools are not doing for us. I'm a U.S. Marine. I went to military school, spent 2 tours in Vietnam, went down 3 times. And my most important job was bringing my men home alive. So as a Marine lieutenant, I went there with 16 men. All 16 of us walked off the plane.
Oh, good for you.
The Air Force Base. And then immediately got hit by rotten eggs and spit on by the hippies.
Yeah.
All the love child Woodstock generation.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I saw Nancy Pelosi and Sanders in that crowd.
Yeah. Well, you had John Kerry over here spinning his lies about what was happening. I mean, the agenda was thick already.
So, I mean, your program, Man in America, is important because you get people who are talking about from what they actually see and do versus a textbook.
Exactly. And so you mentioned the war cycle, and there's a little documentary called All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, and you can see it too. That you can see that, and this is also, Martin Armstrong, I'm a big fan of, and he's a good friend, that he can just look at what's happening with currencies and with money, and he can know exactly when these wars are starting. And I share a similar perspective on China, that I'm greatly concerned about. I think that they're in a very weakened state right now. I think that there's issues and trouble in their country that they won't let the world see, but that are very real. And that I think that we are seeing a lot of the beginnings of, some sort of kinetic war. And there's people that say, "Oh, we'll never be in a kinetic war with China." And it's like, well, a lot of people say we'll never have a lot of things happen, and history tells us time and again that they end up do happening.
History repeats. We don't learn from it. So this here is a book called The Big Print by Lawrence Lepard. I recommend it. It's about how America got rich by printing money and buying things. So we don't produce much. We just buy it with fake money. That was a reserve currency in 1944. But it says here so it's called The Big Print. It says the broken money system gives one group of citizens an unfair advantage. Me. I love it. If you're financially educated, it's the best thing. That's why I teach the games and all this stuff. It also grants undue power to the government. This is fake money. It gives undue power to the fake government, which has led to a lot of bad policies and perpetual war. Perpetual war. Because when you can print money, you can fight wars. Wars are expensive. So, after 2 tours in Vietnam, getting off the plane in Norton Air Force Base, 1972, and getting hit with rotten eggs and spit on by hippies. And today I see them as politicians. Something's wrong, my friend. Something's wrong with America. We're now Marxists.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And so if we're looking at this massive reset on the horizon, which I in my opinion, 2008, the housing bubble, it's like, well, okay, that was so isolated compared to where we are now, which is a multi-quadrillion dollar debt bubble, right? With the derivatives markets, and it's so unsustainable, the money printing. And I've even felt that even all the money printing, sending money over to Ukraine was another. The politicians knew that the collapse was coming, knew the dollar was nearing its end, and so they're just looking, how can we siphon as much money off as possible and launder it through FTX and through Ukraine and through the black weapons market, everything, because they know that this is coming. And so with this foresight of thinking, okay, there is this massive change happening. The one thing that you also find is that whether it's war, financial collapse, famine, whatever it is, most people suffer, but the people that saw it coming and acted, not only do they not suffer, but they actually have an opportunity to become very, very, very wealthy. And not that we want to suffer off of become rich off the suffering of our fellow Americans, but I think that if there's more good people that can see this coming and can prepare, accordingly, it's not just going to be the Wall Street bankers that walk away with a suitcase full of cash while everyone else is penniless. Like, we can also be in that position. And so, what is your advice for people that sense this is coming, but want to position themselves in a way that they can actually really, potentially change the course of their own family's fortunes through their actions? Like, what would you say for someone in preparation for an event like this?
Well, I think you and I started at the top of your show at the start. People say, well, nothing's changing. Again, the problem is people do not get, this is our Buckminster Fuller, people cannot get out of the way of things they cannot see moving towards them. It's like this giant truck is coming on the road, but you can't see it. But it's already hit, and you can see it in the money, the price of gold, the price of real estate. Every time you print money, the rich get richer. God bless them. I'm making so much money today, but the trouble with printing money, it causes inflation in assets. So when you print money in assets like gold or a house or in stocks, they go up. But Mr. and Mrs. Public, they have no assets. So there's inflation also, but it's in food, eggs, and chicken. You know what I mean? So the poor are getting poor because they're idiots. They went to school. Listen, they sent their kids to school, learned nothing about money. Are you kidding me? How stupid can you be? But they drank the Kool-Aid of go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. Well, who told you that bullshit? Do you know what I mean? A school teacher. And I come from a family of school teachers. So like I'm the dummy in the family because I only have a Bachelor of Science degree, which stands for BS. They have their masters and PhDs. I said, yes, but I have a higher degree than you. I said, yeah, but I got one of these things here. They call a financial statement. And this is my report card. When I go to see my banker, this is what my banker wants to see. They want to see how smart I am with my money. The problem is, the reason I created the board game is you have to understand that that's Rich Dad Poor Dad. The whole thing's a financial statement. Rich Dad Poor Dad has a book on accounting, most boring subject on earth. I flunked out of that school too. I was in the MBA program at the University of Hawaii. I was still flying for the Marine Corps out of Hawaii. And I sat there listening to this accounting teacher, and he didn't know anything. I sat there, but he was textbook smart. When I was asking about, how do I pay zero taxes? What about depreciation, amortization? He says, you have to pay taxes. So who told you that? America was founded in 1773 on a tax revolt. Taxes didn't start again until the Civil War. Why don't you study history, you stupid teacher? Don't teach kids if you're stupid, you know what I mean? So I hang around, I get into fights all the time with academic types. But the academic types are the ones who are running our country today. Like, what's her, Janet Yellen? She's not an economist. I think she's a labor lawyer or something. And she took our short-term debt. She took our long-term debt and made it short-term. Now we have a massive, massive debt problem. It's a roll over our debt. Thank you, Janet, Professor Yellen. I think she's from Berkeley or something like that. I'm going, holy mackerel, we're run by a bunch of village idiots I call professors. My God, just look at what's happening. But they can't see it, Seth. You cannot get out of the way of things you cannot see. When you look around you, why is the price of gold going up? Because the purchasing power of the dollar is coming down. Life is getting harder and harder for the 90%. 10% are getting richer and richer. So Rich Dad Poor Dad is about how you can be the 10%, not the 90%. And you do that by playing games. Well, what's wrong with a game? Well, you have to figure this out with your hands and brain and all this. I follow Maria Montessori, one of the greatest educational entrepreneurs. She was a genius, boy. And she said, what the hand does, the mind remembers. In other words, the way humans are designed to learn is with this. Like, you think Tiger Woods became the greatest golfer on earth reading a book or listen to lectures? He had to go out there and make mistakes. He's hit more bad golf balls than I ever will. But that's why he's a world champion. He made a lot of mistakes. So our academic system is so destroying our world and our country right now. Just look at Janet Yellen. Just wake up. Do you know what I mean? I would listen to a college professor. They think they are smart. They're really on AI, artificial intelligence. So when somebody says, what's AI? I said, a college degree. They can see
It's a
what
good
I went
point.
to school, right?
Well, I feel lucky because I went to art school. So I was always an
Good.
artist. And so I went, and somehow I came out of a liberal arts school with this mission to fight communism instead of the mission to promote communism. But I spent a lot of my high school and my college career sculpting, drawing, painting,
Yes.
building, which is great because I wasn't learning all the academic BS. And so I left from there and I thought it was a blank slate. So I became an entrepreneur and never looked back.
Well, the reason I applaud you, the reason I like games, I learned everything playing Monopoly. It's not that tough. 4 greenhouses, 1031 Red Hotel. So I own red hotels all over the world. I have 15,000 rental units. I pay no tax because real estate, you don't have to pay taxes if you know what you're doing. And I'm $1.2 billion in debt. But what the game teaches, I had a rich dad. He was a great guy. There's 4 intelligences. We have mental, physical, what the hand, you can't learn to play golf with just mentaling it. You have physical, mental, emotional. What happens when you make a mistake, when you lose money? Well, emotion kicks in. Or I have a bad temper. Somebody says to me, I get angry, and I lose my temper instead of being stoic. But the fourth one is spiritual. So it's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual.
America is under siege. You've seen the headlines: terror attacks, chaos, and whispers of coordinated threats. Intelligence insiders and whistleblowers are sounding the alarm. For years, the border's been wide open, allowing dangerous groups of terrorists, cartels, even foreign soldiers to infiltrate our nation. The deep state doesn't want you prepared. And even with Trump coming back in charge, smooth sailing certainly is not guaranteed. Experts are warning us disruptions are coming, chaos is just around the corner. Think about it. What would you do if another pandemic hits? Or if our grid goes dark? Or if coordinated attacks erupt across our country overnight? Right now is the time to act while you still can. Your family's survival depends on having a secure food supply. That is why Heaven's Harvest exists. Heaven's Harvest offers the highest quality, long term, storable food, delicious, nutritious, and designed to last up to 25 years. Imagine the peace of mind knowing that you have 3, 6, or even 12 months of food ready for any emergency. Don't wait for the shelves to go empty or for the next attack to catch you off guard. Take control now. Go to heavensharvest.com and secure your supply. Use promo code SETH, that's SETH, for an exclusive 15% discount on your entire order. Picture this: your family is safe, secure, and well fed while chaos unfolds outside. That security starts today. Heaven's Harvest, because tomorrow isn't promised. Protect your family by preparing today. Visit heavensharvest.com right now and use promo code SETH to save 15% off. Don't wait until it's too late. Your family is depending on you.
And the reason I say it's good that you went to art school is because we have two brains, right brain and left brain. So I was more right brain than left brain. I was on display at the Academy of Arts in Honolulu. So what makes a person smart is they have left brain, the numbers, and the right brain, the creativity side. So you have the creativity side. If I could pitch my game, just play the game, your left brain will kick in. You go, oh. And there's a lot of left brain people like Janet Yellen and the professors at schools. They have no right brain. They're the most boring individuals on planet Earth. You don't say, hey, professor, let's go out and have a drink. You might get away from those guys. So you have to have a right brain, a left brain, and 4 intelligences: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. So that's what our games teach. And that's why, when my family says to me, but I have a master's degree. I have a financial statement. But I'm debt free. I'm $1.2 billion in debt. But I have a lot in savings. I said, I don't save money. I save gold, silver, and Bitcoin. But man, we're in 2 different worlds right now, Seth. We're as divided as they come. And this is my good friend here, and he's kicking butt. So I don't know what's going to happen. Only time will tell. But man, he's got a lot of guts, because in this picture here, the patch is on his ear. He was shot the day before. And he and I were sitting there yakking. He was asking me what it's like to get shot at in this thing here. I said, Donald, I like getting shot at because I could shoot back. And he went, oh, that's a big difference. So we're all different, Seth. You know what I mean? We're all wired up differently. And so I like what you're doing with Man in America, is you're giving man, or anybody who wants to speak, a voice out there. We fought for the freedom of speech. And that's being lost today.
Yeah. Well, this is where I think the battle is at too, is information. And so, instead of carrying a muzzle loader a couple hundred years ago, I've got a microphone, right? And that's my way of fighting. And so let's just say someone's watching this and say they've got most of their life savings sitting in a 401k, which is divided between stocks and bonds, right? They're existing in that way, right? Because they're following what they were told. They worked till they're 65, they saved, they built their 401k, they retired. Um, you mentioned before that people can't get out of the way from something they can't see coming, which is so true, right? If you don't know that there's a hurricane coming, You're going to be out there grilling hot dogs on the back porch when the hurricane hits. If you know it's coming, you've either left the region or you're in a hurricane zone and you've already built you've got a bunker in the backyard, and that'd be me, right? But for people that do sense this and they see it, but they're not sure what to do, like, should they leave their assets in stock markets and bonds? What do you recommend? Like, what can people do now to position themselves to weather this hurricane?
Well, not a financial planner. I would never be one, and I don't give advice. And the reason I have a cash flow board game in the back of me, you can see that's the rat race. That's what people go to school, again, the rat race. Outside's a fast track. Okay? So our goals change when our abilities change. So rather than buying IBM or Apple stock and all this, my goal as a kid was to take a company public. That's what real entrepreneurs do. So I've taken 3 companies public now. Gold company, silver company. I'm going to take a lithium company public. Lithium is for EVs, electric batteries. So I go to the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or Toronto Stock Exchange, depending on the thing, and I make millions selling shares of my company. I don't buy stocks. I sell
Create them.
stocks. Okay, but that takes education, and that's why I hang out with the Donald here, and we think differently. When Hillary Clinton attacked him, saying, Donald, you don't pay taxes. He goes, that means I'm smart. But these Nazis are like, the Clintons and Obamas were, and the Bidens. Oh my God, I've never seen such crooks in my life. I don't know them personally, but it's, Trump puts a wall up and Biden takes the wall down, and 13 million immigrants steam across the border, and we put them up in hotels. And the first thing that Biden did was cut the Keystone pipeline, which brought oil from Canada. Well, I'm an oil guy too. I sell oil, and I own oil wells. I thought, oh, thank you, Joe. Just to be a big flavor, because I was pumping oil at about $30 a barrel. And when Biden cut that pipe from the Keystone pipeline, oil went to $130 a barrel. So that communist Marxist son of a bitch, Biden, made me a rich man. I'm not complaining, but he fucked the middle class. The price of oil goes up, makes everything expensive. And he did it intentionally. So that's why I say when I got off the plane in Norton Air Force Base, 1972, I got hit by rotten eggs, all these hippies out there from the Woodstock generation and spitting on me. They're now our politicians. Does that
And the
make any sense to you?
professors, a lot of them, those young kids now, they went into academia. They're the professors, they're the policymakers. Yeah,
You got it. You can see it. You can see both sides of it. You know what I mean?
exactly. Exactly.
So I swear to God, I saw Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer out there, but they were a lot younger then.
You probably did. Yeah. Who knows what kind of love affair was going on with those 3 in the
Now I
70s.
got run out of school so many times.
Yeah. Um, so I wanna talk a little bit about silver, right? Because I obviously know that you're big on. Actually, I'll pull up one of your recent posts because it's worth reading, and I recommend people follow you over on X as well because you're consistently, you're not just spouting off random things, you're writing really good information. So you said, please listen to gold, silver, and Bitcoin. What are they telling you? Gold is at an all-time high. Demand for silver is exploding, and Bitcoin is roaring. Are you listening? Repeating myself, I warned of the biggest stock and bond market crash in history was coming in my previous book, Rich Dad's Prophecy, Who Stole My Pension, etc. The giant crash has arrived. Um, but here you say, though, those who take action and acquire real gold, silver, and Bitcoin may come out of this premeditated disaster, the new rich and the new leaders of the world. So, and I also know that you've put some information about silver. I think this is another tweet you had for silver. Yeah, here, good news for people with not much money. I'm buying more silver eagles today. Actually, funny, just yesterday I bought 60 more silver eagles. I found, a friend of mine was selling. It's like, okay, great, get them, throw them in the safe. It says, so the good news is silver is the biggest investment bargain today. Gold has already hit all-time highs. I have plenty of Bitcoin. Silver is still 50% below its all-time high. Today about $35. So Also really important here, it says your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. And it's interesting actually because I so side point, I used to have a few different businesses in the jewelry industry, and I would buy, jewelry and watches and diamonds and things, and that was always it. Like, I'd get more excited when I could buy well. I remember one time I bought this Art Deco Cartier tiara, and it was this beautiful 1920s platinum Cartier, which I actually ended up selling it back to Cartier for their archives. Remember the day that we bought that, right? And I won't get into the details of it, but we bought it for, it was a low six-figure purchase. I mean, it was an expensive tiara, but it was also a six-figure profit on the sale of it, right? Because again, when you buy it right, that's key. Like, that's where you make your money in buying, not in waiting for your assets to grow. It's like you buy well. So when you talk about silver, I always keep this little 10-ounce chunk on my desk here. I like the feeling of it. But, um, why the belief in silver that you have?
Well, silver is gold and silver money. Everything else is credit, debt, in other words. So the way I say it is this here is a 1964 a half dollar. Okay? There's no copper on it. It's pure silver. So it's 64. And I hold up things like this. So here's $5. Wait, this is $5. This is the silver. Which one do you want? This is a half dollar. This is $5. Which do most people take? This. And I say in 10 years, you'll need probably 100 of these to buy that. You know, my job is not to give them the answer. My job is to get them to think. So now why would I rather have this half dollar than $5? Just a long-term store of value. But they're printing this now. I think was it $36 trillion our debt right now?
Yeah, I think it's
And
it's
we
it's close to 37 trillion, right around 30. It's
and if you were to pay $1 a second back, it would take you 32,688 years to pay off $1 trillion. And we print it like nothing. No, but I'd rather have this than this. So when I was a kid, I was just holding up it was a quarter in those days. Look at. So why is it copper? It was a 65. Why is it copper? And that was Gresham's law. Gresham's law states when bad money enters the system, good money goes to hiding. So immediately I started going to I'd go in caddy because my parents had no money, for academics. Anyway, I'd go in caddy and I'd take my dollar. I got $1 for 9 holes. So if I carried 2 bags for 9 holes, I got $2, And then I go to the bank and I trade it in for quarters, 25-cent pieces. And if it had copper, I'd throw it away. But if it was silver, I'd keep it. So I went away to school. I went to military school in New York. I come home to Hawaii. I said, "Hey, Mom, where's my bag of silver?" She says, "I spent it." And that's why poor people are poor. They don't know real money from fake money. It's that simple.
gosh. I had a gold buying business a couple of years back when I was back in Ohio, and I had a client came in, and his parents had owned convenience stores growing up, and he brought in big bags of pure, or 90% silver, right? Dimes and quarters, and I bought them at spot, which was great because I think at that time silver was $17 an ounce, right? So I just put them on the scale and calculated it, and just bought them at the silver value. But that was the thing though, is that it's exactly so. He would do is every day at the end of the day, he'd go through all the change they took in at the convenience store, and he'd pull out all the pre 62 or 63, 64, whether the half dollars, the quarters, the dimes, and he accumulated, and he probably brought in, I don't know, $5,000 worth of coins that their face value might have been, 100 bucks, or a couple $100.
Again, that's Gresham's law. When bad money enters the system, good money goes into hiding. And some of the guys, I say a lot of people, that's what I love about YouTube, I can listen to different opinions. There's one guy was saying Gresham's law means humans intuitively know real from fake. So the reason Gresham's law works is, as a kid, when I picked up the little quarter here, 1965, I said, wait a minute. Something intuitively, intuition, but something's wrong. Something is wrong. But the average person, because they went to school, that intuition is processed out. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. You're basically Pavlovian's dogs. Bark, 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 bark. They're the most stupid people. The Fed has 4,000 PhDs in there. Holy mackerel, all like Janet Yellen. And that's why Trump told Powell, I want to fire you. I mean, I don't know if Trump's he's a good friend of mine, and only time will tell how how policies work out. But I like what he's doing, He's going to shut down the Department of Education. He must have shut down the Kremlin while he's at it, because same thing.
Yeah, well, I'd love to see him shut down the IRS. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd love to see, which I'm
Yeah.
hoping happen. But actually, it's funny because you mentioned the $5 bill and the coin, and I think there was a video that I saw recently where there was a guy. It was one of like the man on the street type interviews. A guy's just walking up to random people, and I think that what he's doing is he's offering them. I think he has a 1 ounce gold coin or $100 bill, and then he's saying, "Do you want the gold coin or the $100 bill?" And most of the people, and then maybe it was selectively edited, I don't know, but most of the people that he showed took the $100 bill instead of the gold coin. People don't I think a lot of people don't recognize real money anymore. They think that a wad of hundreds is real money.
Right. And that's why this guy I was listening to, he says humans aren't stupid, but we go to school. And it takes our intuition out. It takes our intuition away. And we listen to what we think are authorities. I'm not really religious, but they're called false prophets. They're called professors. And I grew up in Professorville. And my poor dad was head of the teachers union. And what Marx, unions are Marxists.
Yeah.
Workers of the world unite, Karl Marx. And I sit there listening to these professors talk about, I thought they have a meeting about education. No, it was about they wanted more money and more time off. That's all the teachers union was about. That's the Department of Education. Now we have to have teachers. Don't get me wrong. But one of the best lessons I got, I was 7 years old in Sunday school. And I hated going to Sunday school. I just hated sitting in a classroom anyway. So this little Sunday school teacher, she was really cute, about 25 years old. She goes, okay, why were the 3 wise men wise? So I thought about it, I raised my hand and she goes, why? Because they were rich. She goes, rich? How'd you get there rich? She said, man, they went to see Jesus with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That stuff costs money. She says, you think they were wise because they were rich? I said, yeah. She says, so I said, what's your answer? She says, they are wise because they're looking for the best teacher. And that's YouTube today. You can seek the best teacher that fits your belief system if it works for you. I'm not here to censor who you learn from, but it's the important thing of seeking your best teacher. So right after that, I was 10, I went to seek my rich dad. And the thing that kind of kicked my butt was, as I was telling you, I was caddying, and I went to a rich kid school. I mean, I wasn't rich, but due to the way the boundaries were set, I was on the rich side. And I'm sitting in the caddy shack. My classmates are in the country club. And kids are, I go, why is that? Why are they in the clubhouse? And I'm in the caddy shack. Why do they eat in the dining room? And why do they go to the back door and buy a hamburger, like a dog sitting in the back of the house? So those are the life life's events that we all have. But if we don't trust our intuition that something's wrong, or this is not right, whatever it is, then you've been bred out of you. Go to school, get a job, save money, get out of debt, invest for long-term in the stock market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. I wouldn't do any of that. So do you have the courage to go with your intuition? That's the hard part. Got to trust yourself.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's really important actually. 'Cause I think that they've intentionally bred that out of us through the education system primarily. It's also, like my parents were both, not to talk down to them, but they were wage slaves, right? They were a slave to, my dad. He worked at AT&T, and he had a good job, and it supported us, but he was tied to this career that if he was lucky, he'd keep his job till he was 65 and be able to retire. But he was a slave to that wage, and maybe he'd get a 5% raise every year. But then he put all of it, a lot of his savings were in his 401k in the stock market. And so come .com crash, he lost, 90% of his savings that were all sitting in the stock market. And it took we never really recovered from it, actually. Like it took years. It took years to find some sense of stability again after that.
And that's the plan. That's how they steal your money legally. They have the ability to change the laws and things like that. So it's like, look at this here. This was my second book. It was called The Cash Flow Quadrant. And so E stands for employee. So our schools, it's number 2. It goes, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, da, da, da. And this is self-employed, small business. So what happens is employees pay 40% of the income in taxes. This is worldwide. So a person quits their job, becomes an entrepreneur, they pay 60%. And the issue is, can you get down here? This is big business. This is Elon Musk, Apple. And I stands for insider. So if you're a big business owner, you pay 20% tax. If you're an inside investor, 0. And so when I present that, I don't do it anymore. I presented at a college. I presented at Arizona State University that, and they almost put teachers revolted. I said, "You're teaching kids not to pay taxes." I asked the teacher, the professor, I said, "Have you read the Communist Manifesto?" No. I said, "Taxes are as un-American as it gets. What Marx said about taxes is a graduated income tax is essential for the spread of communism." So America was a tax-free nation in 1773. So that's the first revolt. 1776 was war. So this is the fourth turning coming to action right now, is that, let's just read this here. This is the big print by Larry Lepard. He goes, "This book is written because the system has been set up and controlled by a so-called group of elite financial and government people who don't care about you, your well-being. They've tilted the board game in their favor." So that's what I at Rich that I teach is that's a board game, tilted in your favor. And one of the ways you get into your favor is when you look at this is the real game board, it's a financial statement. So you learn to be an accountant in many ways. But this is the difference. For the poor and middle class focus on here, income and expense. Oh, reduce your expenses. This is what the rich focus on. It's called a balance sheet, assets and liabilities. And this is called a statement of cash flow, which is the board game cash flow. So I teach financial literacy because all it is words. What's an asset, what's a liability, what's an income, what's an expense, what's a statement of cash flow. And go, oh, it's so hard. I go, well, look at this. You're rich or greedy. I said, we're not greedy. Words are free. Change your vocabulary, you change your life. And I remember, again, I'm not really religious, but, and the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. So my poor dad always said, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I'm a school teacher. The union should take care of me and the government should take care of me. Those are his words. And my rich dad says, find a business, start it, take it public on the New York Stock Exchange. That's what I do. And I get richer. I'd rather be rich than be a poor man like my father. I hate to say that. So that's why I teach when I talk about Buckminster Fuller, what does God want done? I said, I better start teaching what my rich dad taught me. Because if I don't, I think I die anyway, because I'm holding back when I should be giving, And the board game is all over the world, about 20 different languages. The board game, you buy it once and you can teach thousands of people. The game was designed for people to teach people, to avoid the school system where you're inducted into poverty. Can't think. I'm looking for a job, looking for a good 401k. Poor person.
It's a trap.
So
So
that's why I do what I do.
let me bring up your website, because actually an hour has already gone past. It's like 15 minutes. I guess we've been so deep into this discussion. So your website is richdad.com. Now,
Right.
I'm assuming people can obviously they can buy your books, the board game, etc. Here, right? So here's the board game, the cash flow game, and they can you get the books as well, right?
Oh, this one up here it's a comic book, Escape from the Rat Race, a little bit lower. Right there, this one here, I don't know if you can see me pointing down. That's for kids,
Oh, great. Oh, good, good.
comic book. So I do my best to change up here. You change up here, the brain, you can change your life. But if you go to school, you go to school and get a job, you wind up here. Or this is a doctor, or lawyer, or accountant, the smart guys. So when I asked my mother, what should I become? She said, why don't you become a doctor? I said, Mom, you got to be smart. She says, you're right. Don't become a doctor. So I followed my rich dad. My rich dad says, come down here.
Yeah, I remember one of the
Or change your words. And the words became flesh and dwelt amongst us. If you say, I can't afford it, guess what? You can't.
exactly. I remember I read this book probably when I was 20, Think and
Yeah,
Grow
great.
Rich, Napoleon Hill, and it was one of those very formative books. But it's all about mindset. It's about what's going on in here. Like, what are the
Yeah,
limits what are the stories that we're telling ourselves that keep us
yeah,
trapped?
yeah. You know, words become flesh. Change of words. Words are free. Assets, liabilities. You call a liability an asset, you're in trouble. And that's what people are doing. And the other thing that's happening with AI, artificial intelligence, is the biggest gold mine in America I got for pennies. It's in Provo, Utah. And what happened was, what in 1850, these guys were out there digging around. They struck this vein and became a highly producing gold mine. And then the vein tapped out. So it was empty. So they shut it down. And then this goofy friend of mine, I do a lot of work in Vancouver, British Columbia, where the real entrepreneurs are. Also, some of the biggest crooks are up there. But any guys in mining is a crook anyway. So he went up there and he says, "Hey, guess what?" I said, "What?" "They found this old mine." I said, "Yeah." "It's tapped out." I said, "Yeah." He says, "We got all the records from those guys 150 years ago." "What?" "We took their books." "Yeah." "We applied AI to it." "They missed the vein." What? These miners back then didn't have the technology and they missed the vein. So we got that gold mine for nothing because everybody thought it was tapped out. And then 2 years ago, we listed it on the New York Stock Exchange, made more money. That's the 1%. And I always wanted to be in the 1%. I like the game. It's called cash flow. I like games. I love Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, red hotel, don't pay taxes. And as Marx says, a graduated income tax is essential for the spread of communism. So when these guys say, well, you should pay, if you don't pay taxes, you're un-American. I said, America was founded on the Boston Tea Party. It was the tax revolt. But you can't tell them that. You can't tell them that.
Mm-mm.
They don't want to know. Don't teach pigs to sing. It wastes your time. It annoys the pig. My favorite
Goats?
sayings.
Yeah, goats maybe could.
How many times have you tried to teach a pig, Seth?
Well, we don't have pigs yet. I might try teaching my goats to sing. They're pretty vocal.
It's frustrating as hell. Because you run to all the belief systems and all this. So they may have, if this is a financial, they may have nothing down here, but they're living debt free and going, big deal. I have a job. I have a 401k. I have savings. So I don't have any of those things. But you've got to have those things. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. That's not education. It's called indoctrination.
It absolutely is. It is. Well, Mr. Kiyosaki, I know that your time is tight, and you've given us already more than an hour. So I want to be conscious of that. And let me bring up your website again. It's just richdad.com. Easy to remember. I'll put it in the description as well. So yeah, Mr. Kiyosaki, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for what you've made your mission and educating people in a way that is not going to lead them into wage slavery. Do you have any thoughts as we're wrapping up here?
Well, again, the reason I created the cash flow board game was so people could teach people. You don't need to go to Obama's school system and get deeply in debt. So you buy the cash flow board game, you play it 10 times, and you teach 10 people, you'll see a whole different world. What the hand does, Maria Montessori, what the hand does, the mind remembers. And we sit in school listening to a teacher who has no idea what they're talking about. I'd rather play this game here. And then go teach other people. And it's called give and you shall receive. If what you're doing with men in America is you're giving. And the juice always comes back.
No, it does. It does. Well, thank
Oh,
you.
God.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you giving me your time today.
If you say Mr. Clay again, Clark in Tulsa, he's a great guy.
He is
I'm
actually.
glad.
I just talked to him before our interview, and he's always got a million things going on. He's
I
a
don't know
good
how
guy though.
his mother just sat there. He has a great mom. And that's one of the best things. If you have great parents, life's a lot better than people with bad parents. So you could
It
tell his
is.
mother supported him a lot, even though he's lunatic, he's insane, he keeps going. And he doesn't know when to stop, but he's an amazing man.
No, he is. He is. He absolutely is.
So thank you.
Oh, thank
Best of
you.
luck.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Robert. We hit on a bunch of different topics. It's just nice to speak to someone like that. This guy's really lived. He has a lot of lived experience. He's probably made a lot of money, probably lost a lot of money. He's obviously been into war, and he was a helicopter pilot. So really interesting guy. But one thing that I wanted just to highlight in that discussion, and this is a core belief of mine, is that I fundamentally believe that some sort of massive reset is looming. Now, it could be 2 months from now, it could be 2 years from now. I think it's probably not past 5 years, but the system that we are currently living in, this fiat dollar-based system, is at the end of its life cycle. right? And it's just the reality. Fiat currencies have life cycles, but the problem is that right now, for the past, however many, decades and decades, that the fiat currency known as the US dollar has been the global reserve currency. So we have this fiat currency that's dying, that's also has been the global reserve currency, that the whole system is tied to this currency. And so when this reset happens, because it can't go on forever, right? And this is just the reality, right? You keep blowing up a balloon, eventually it pops. And right now there is a balloon which is called the global debt balloon. And the debt is literally in the quadrillions when you get into the derivatives. And this whole system, again, in my own opinion, is going to be changing, and it's going to rapidly change. And so, again, and as per the conversation with Mr. Kiyosaki, if you're thinking, what do you do? Uh, Again, I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research. But for me, like, I don't have any money sitting in the stock market. Now, I'm not like a guy like Robert. I didn't start companies and take them public, so I can't tell you that. But I don't have any of my assets sitting in the stock market. Even within my savings account, I try to keep very much money in my savings account. I don't trust the banks. I don't trust a number somewhere on some sort of screen that I have to log in and look at. Like, this is what I trust. I trust a piece of silver in my hand. I trust the land and the soil and my chickens. I trust my, buckets of seeds and grains and food that I've set aside. And so if you are looking for safety, looking for ways of protecting your assets, especially amidst a collapse, again, I'm not a financial advisor, do your research, but for me, it's this. It is hard assets. Precious metals, in my opinion, are the number one way to make it through any kind of financial collapse, because not only are these values of these metals insanely undervalued, through suppression by the big banks, but during a collapse scenario, after things level out a little bit, you always see that gold and silver end up skyrocketing after that, because everyone then realizes, like, wait, how'd the stock market lose 60% or 50% or 40% overnight? Like, the whole thing is rigged. So that's why I'm a big fan of gold and silver, is that it's a real asset. It's not about speculating. It's not about, oh, if I buy it at this price, I'm going to get rich. Yes, of course, that'd be great. Like, I'd love to see silver hit $100 an ounce, which I think it will. I think we'll see well more than that, well beyond that. But it's really about looking at and saying, okay, if there is some sort of global financial collapse, some sort of depression, Great Depression 2.0, I don't want to be the guy that loses everything. I want to be the guy that says, okay, I've lost certain things here and there. However, my core wealth is preserved in something that will not lose its value in the same way that everything else will, which is precious metals, gold and silver. So if you are looking for a place to buy them, if you already have someone that you're buying from that you trust, great. I will warn you, there are a lot of shady companies out there. Always make sure that if you're buying gold and silver, that you're buying it to maximize how many ounces. If someone's trying to sell you like a special edition silver that's priced at $50 an ounce, they're ripping you off. You should buy these things for, 5, 10% within this, whatever the spot range is. So if silver's at $35 an ounce, if you're buying it for $40 an ounce, you're safe. Okay. But be very cautious with that. Now, but if you're looking for a company that you can trust, I work with Noble Gold Investments. I know the CEO. I've known them for quite some time. Very, very straight shooters. They've got very fair pricing. But what's beautiful is that they are specialists in IRA transfers. So if you've got a bunch of money sitting in an IRA that you haven't been touching because you're worried, you say you're worried about the stock market, but you don't want to pull it out because you get taxed, there are actually mechanisms that allow you to transfer your assets out of an IRA into physical metal. So you can literally transfer a chunk of your IRA into silver or gold that you own, that is literally yours. And you can do it in a way that you avoid all the taxes and fees. And Noble Gold is the best in the industry for doing this. So if you want to call them, ask some questions, get some more information, go to goldwithseth.com, fill out this form that you see, or you just call 626-654-1906. So again, it's goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906.